Hey, what is up guys? I'm KBHD here, and this is a video dedicated entirely to the performance of the new Mac Pro. So this is a bit of a preview leading up to the full review that I'm working on of the Mac Pro, but I mentioned a little bit in my unboxing and first impressions video that I got the 8-core Mac Pro for a reason over the 12-core. I actually opted for the 8-core model for a couple of reasons that I'll go into, but essentially this is all the benchmarks and sort of performance tests that I thought would make sense for Apple's only workstation grade machine. So there are a couple of key benchmarking apps that a lot of people use to benchmark Macs and all sorts of desktop machines that you guys shared with me on Twitter, and things that I've used in past projects, including the fastest Mac Mini in the world project and the Hackintosh Pro project. So the first of these is called Blackmagic Disk Speed Test, and essentially this just measures the read and write speeds that you're going to be capable of on the Mac Pro's PCI-based SSDs. So if you'll recall, the fastest Mac Mini in the world project had a single Vertex 4 SSD, and the Hackintosh Pro project had a pair of SSDs in RAID 0, but as you can see by the numbers, neither of these compare to the results of the PCI-based SSDs in the new Mac Pro, and that's going to get you some crazy fast program opening times and data access. All right, so the next test is a very popular Geekbench app. You've probably seen it already run on phones and tablets, everything from the iPhone all the way up to the previous generation Mac Pro. So as a benchmark, the fastest Mac Mini in the world project scored around 10,000 on Geekbench. That actually wasn't shown in the video series, interestingly enough. And the Hackintosh Pro actually scored 15,800. And actually, I want to be clear here, these are the multi-threaded scores, as Geekbench 3 here will always kick out a pair of scores, a single-threaded score and a multi-threaded score. So Geekbench on this Mac Pro kicked out, without screen recording on, 3,600 for the single-threaded score and 26,000 for the multi-threaded score, and I'll give more context on these in a second. So the next test is called Cinebench. It's a less popular benchmarking app. A lot of people don't use it, but since I've used it in my two previous projects, then I figured I'd continue to use it now for a benchmark. So it scored roughly 800-ish on the fastest Mac Mini in the world, and roughly 1,600 on the Hackintosh Pro. Now, even though it looks fairly comprehensive, it's definitely an older benchmark, and I don't even know if all the numbers looked right when looking at the composition for the final score. But either way, the final score here in Cinebench was a much higher 2,200 on the Mac Pro. Now, last but not least in the benchmarking department is called Cinebench, and I actually think that Cinebench is one of the most accurate, overall, all-encompassing benchmark apps you can use. It tests both the GPU side and the CPU side of things, and there's a really wide range of scores you can get. So on the GPU side, this Mac Pro has the absolute highest end dual AMD FirePro D700 workstation grade graphics cards with 6 gigs of video RAM each. And these absolutely killed it, topping out the benchmark at an average of 86 frames per second. This isn't necessarily a representation of gaming performance because they're not gaming cards, but more of just how much power you have at your disposal with these cards in here that a number of production suites and applications can take advantage of. And on the CPU side, this is the 8-core beast, like I mentioned, and it ended up with a score of 1,223, which is surprisingly not that far behind the 12-core Mac Pro at all. And that's actually what impressed me the most. But honestly, with 8 cores, 16 threads, you kind of expect it to crush benchmarks, and it absolutely did. So it's really easy to tell by all these benchmark results that the Mac Pro is clearly a very fast, very powerful machine. But that brings us back to the question, why did I go with the 8-core Mac Pro over the 12-core Mac Pro? And the simple answer to that is single-core, single-threaded performance. There is a 4-core, 6-core, 8-core, and 12-core version of the Mac Pro. And each time you move up in number of cores, you move down in clock speed from 3.7 gigahertz to 3.5 to 3.0 to 2.7. But the thing is, higher clock speeds mean better single-core performance for everyday apps, but more cores in general means better multi-core performance for the bigger apps that can take advantage of it. So the 4-core Mac Pro would be like driving a van down the parkway, you know, pretty fast, but also still pretty strong. Where the 12-core Mac Pro, on the other hand, would be an 18-wheeler cab. Definitely not the quickest thing in the world, but there is no way anything is going to slow it down, even the heaviest of tasks. So the 8-core Mac Pro would fall somewhere in the middle. So at the end of the day, as a person that's using the Mac Pro as both a beast of a video editing rig and a day-to-day machine, it makes sense to have a nice balance between amazing multi-threaded performance and nice single-core and everyday use performance, which means when I'm rendering out videos in Adobe Premiere or projects in Photoshop and things like that, all 8 cores are going to be kicking in, and it's going to take full advantage of that. But at the same time, at 3 gigahertz on a single core, apps like Google Chrome and just browsing around the internet, watching YouTube videos, day-to-day things like that will also be quick, and they won't be quite as slow as they would have been on the massive 12-core. So there's the reasoning, and there's the performance of the 2013 Mac Pro. But there's a lot more information about that coming up, especially in the full review video, which is in the works and on its way. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.